Still wet. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dirt Nation Off-Road. So today what we're doing is another episode dedicated to working on winchers, because there's a couple things that we found in the last couple trips that have to be addressed with the truck. It's a project, you know, you're gonna have to address things, you gotta improve things, and yada yada yada. Since our last video, our upgrade video, we did lockers and we did some things to make it run better, and we did some other things, fix some leaks and stuff like that. Since then, we've taken it out a couple times, and honestly, off-roading, the truck does great. Even for an IFS truck, I was pretty impressed with how this truck has done so far. So getting it on the trail and actually wheeling it, I'm pretty comfortable with it right now. Although we do have a axle sitting inside the garage and a SAS kit from Trail Gear, which we'll be installing on the truck. Now I have to rebuild that axle, and that's stuff that I'm working on right now. That video is currently being recorded. But in the meantime, we're wheeling it and we're dealing it with the IFS till it breaks. So until then, we're gonna keep having a good time with it. Now, the purpose of today's video is to really start to fine tune the truck so that it is a solid running project. You know, when we did this swap and we threw in the new motor, you know, it was just get it running, get it kind of working, and I'll be happy with it. I'm happy with a running project. Now I want to start to dial it in a little bit more so that if I do take it somewhere, I'm not worried about it breaking down or anything like that. And we've noticed a couple issues with the truck since we've swapped it, and we're going to start to address those things today. First and foremost, I broke the throttle cable. Now this is a kickdown cable. Now if you guys don't know what a kickdown cable pretty much does for you is when you're driving, and let's say you're driving at 45 miles an hour, you press the gas harder and you feel your transmission will shift down and give you more power. It's because you have a kickdown cable that controls that. You ask for more power, the transmission will kick down a gear so that you can get more gearing and more power from your engine. With this truck, that doesn't work, and I kind of ruined it. I was messing with it, trying to adjust it, and I ended up just messing it up. So I have a brand new kickdown cable that we'll be installing on the truck. Not today, we're probably going to do that tomorrow, but today what we're actually going to be working on is some fuel related stuff, because one of the things that I want to get better with this truck is fuel economy and just how it runs in general, because currently there are times where it runs particularly rich, and when it runs rich, that pretty much means that's referring to the fuel and air ratio. So it's dumping more fuel than it needs into the engine, and it's usually coming out the exhaust. So when I press the gas, you'll see black smoke. Not quite like a diesel, but you'll see some dark smoke coming out the back. That's because it's running rich currently. So I want to work on getting it so it's not running rich, it's running kind of correctly. And there's a couple reasons why it may be running rich. First and foremost is O2 sensors. So this, you know, I've talked about before, this truck has two O2 sensors. I have one hooked up. I need to make sure that I don't have the wrong one hooked up. So that's something that I'm going to look at. But first, what I'm going to look at, because this truck has a couple other symptoms, such as it takes a while to start. So there's times where it'll start right away, and then there's times where it'll take a good 15 seconds of cranking for it to actually start. And because of that, that makes me think it might be the fuel pressure regulator. So I picked this up directly from Toyota. Because this is a 3.4 motor, they still stock parts for it. So I picked this up. We're going to be installing this today, and then I got some vacuum line stuff so that we can get the idler air control valve hooked up. I'll show you guys that when that happens. And then I might do this today, but I have a fuel filter which gets installed, and then this is our throttle kickdown cable that we'll be doing with Flacco most likely tomorrow. And then I have a fuel pump, which if I don't have to replace the fuel pump, I really don't want to right now, because you have to drop the gas tank to do it. So I just have the fuel pump on deck in case we have to get it taken care of. But that's all the fuel related stuff. We'll be taking care of that stuff. If that doesn't help it run a little bit more, you know, how it's supposed to, then we'll start to look at the wiring and the O2 sensors and everything like that. And then the other thing that I for sure am going to install sometime this weekend is this is a transmission mount, because the transmission mount on winchers, which is the stock one, is shot. It's all cracked, and you can kind of feel it. It looks like the motor shaking, but I think it's the transmission shaking causing the motor to shake, because these motor mounts were good when we installed the truck. So the transmission mount, we'll show you underneath, it's all cracked and beaten up, and we got to get that replaced. So that should be a fairly simple process, but we'll see how that goes. We're going to get started with taking apart the intake. We've done this 100 times, so I'm not going to show you guys exactly how it looks, but we'll take it apart and we'll get started with the fuel pressure regulator, as well as the other things that we're going to take care of underneath there, and then we'll continue from there. just like that, she's taken apart. Now what we're going to be replacing is right here at the end of the fuel rail. That's the fuel pressure regulator. So we're going to be replacing this with the new one right here. Now, because I'm not sure how much fuel is going to come out of here, I actually put some paper towels right here just to keep the fuel rail from dumping a bunch of fuel inside the cylinders, because that is obviously something you do not want. Ready to pull it off? Let's see how much fuel comes out. A little bit. Okay, not much. So, oh no, it's dumping fuel. Shit. That one's on there, so it's at least clogging the leak. It did get quite a bit of fuel down there. Luckily, it didn't go inside the heads or anything, so it'll be fine. By the time I finish this, it'll all evaporate, or I'll just soak it up with paper towels. But the return line, oops, gonna have to take off that clamp right there for the return line, and then we'll put it on right there. And then once I put the 2 bolts in, that installation is complete, and then we'll do the vacuum line. Okay, so got that installed. We put our vacuum line back on. It's bolted in. What I ended up having to do on the old one is I had to chop the end of the return line, which just started dumping fuel, because I think there's a siphon coming from the gas tank. Honestly, I don't understand gas tanks too much, so if you guys could explain that, go ahead. But got that taken care of. What we'll be working on next is this vacuum line. So you can see over here on the intake, there's one line right there. There's one line right there. So what I did was I used to have one just going across, connecting both of them, which isn't incorrect. But what you're supposed to have is this 3-way piece right here. So I'm gonna hook up this 3-way piece, and then this comes to the intake, which is that idler air control valve. So that'll be hooked up right there. So I'll get that installed, and then we're going to start to put it back together, let the engine dry, and then we'll start it up and see how it runs. So, and just to show you where that hose goes, this is the idler air control valve right there. So you see where I'm plugging that in. So that one is going to go right on there. So then we're good to go. All right, so we're all wrapped up. Engine's back together. About an hour and a half left of light. I want to try and knock out this transmission mount as well as the fuel filter before we actually fire up the truck. So we're going to climb under the vehicle. We're going to get started with the transmission mount first. So you can see right here, you see how cracked that is? You definitely don't want that for your mounts. That's going to cause the whole transmission and the transfer case to move around. So we have our new one right here. It's actually going to go in just like that. So what we're going to start with is, now you're supposed to use a transmission jack, but I'm going to use a block of wood and a regular jack just to kind of prop up and give some, just hold up the transmission, because what we have to do is take off the transmission skid plate, or the transfer case skid plate, and then we have to take off this cross member, which is 8/17, and then after that this will fall out. There's also 4 12s on the inside of here that will connect to this, so we'll take off those 12s. Once this drops, then we can take the mount, take it out, put the new one on, and then bolt it all back together. Should be fairly smooth, but this is my first time doing this, so we'll see how it goes. But we're going to get started with taking off the transfer case skid plate, taking off the 4 bolts on the inside, and then going from there. Okay, those are all broken, so we'll go ahead and take this and just, I'm trying not to put my face underneath there because I know that there's a ton of gunk right here, and I really don't want to screw myself up by. Now this is separated from, or it's unbolted from the cross member. Now what I'm going to do is jack up the transmission enough to where I see a little bit of separation in there, and that'll tell me that it's being held up. Okay, there it is. I just saw it loosen from there. We are going to loosen and take off the 4 bolts holding the cross member on. Okay, there's one side completely off. Up next is gonna be a bitch, honestly. 1 2 and 1 2. Actually, it's only 3 bolts. The drive shaft's in the way on this. I did not anticipate that. Okay, good to know. I'm pretty sure these are 14s, so I'm gonna go ahead and start breaking these 14s. Currently playing with it. That's what she said. Ugh. Just trying to get it out of the freaking. There's one bolt that's like, There we go. Whee! You guys can see all the cracks and everything on it. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty shot. Okay. So it stays in place. Okay, it took quite a bit of work, but I was able to get those bolts back on. So now we are bolting the mount back on the transmission. I'm just going to put everything else back together, all the 17s back in for the cross member, and then the 4 bolts on the bottom to match up the cross member with the transfer or the transmission mount. And then we're going to put the transmission skid back on, and then we're good to go for this.
2,000 years later.
You guys saw earlier we replaced the fuel pressure regulator. I thought that was going to fix the running rich issue. It did not, which you know, I said before we're going to start looking at O2 sensors. So I know for sure that the wrong O2 sensor was hooked up, because I recalled when we pulled the motor, I remember that the O2 sensor that I pulled off, whoever unplugged that didn't unplug it. They just ripped the wiring out. And the one that has the wiring ripped out was the front sensor, because that's the one that I pulled off of the donor motor. So I know for sure that the O2 sensor's the wrong one. So I already cut off the connection on this side. This was the one that was hooked up. So this is the cat efficiency one. And then Papa Vic's gonna get that one fixed up. He's gonna get it soldered. Robert's here too. All right, so part of our problem is our kickdown cable that we gotta fix. Now, I've never fixed a kickdown cable. Robert's never done it. Vic doesn't remember doing it, but even though he's probably done it 100 times. Now, we're gonna crack open this transmission, because I'm guessing that shift leak or the throttle cable is the same. So we're gonna crack this one open and kind of take a look at it, and then go from there. Pull that right out, huh? So it looks like it's that simple.
Well, hopefully the other one's like that.
It's only an 8-year difference, one generation. So, and the other thing is, if the new one that I bought doesn't work, I could use this one. This. I mean, it's not that dirty. That's good, right? I'm just really hoping this fucking drive shaft doesn't get in the way too bad. It's still okay. All right, taking off the transpan in 3, 2, 1. Let it go. It's out. Now to angle it without spilling everything everywhere. There we go. Oh, there's a gasket. You can reuse that. Yeah, right. Nope.
Nope. Gasket's a no-go.
I just have to fill it out.
I'll move the. Give me the catch hand.
Shiitakes. That's all she wrote.
Nope. There you go.
Transpan's out. What a nice boulder.
You got it?
I mean, I put it on the inside of this heat shield. Do you think that's okay?
Well, I didn't even see what it was going through.
There's a heat shield where you normally...
No, it was coming out.
It was, but I don't think that was correct. Well, it's either going to touch the steering rack or it's going to touch the exhaust. So currently what we're trying to do is connect... See, there's a little throttle thing right here. Connect this linkage. And that's for that. There we go.
Are you trying to put in the...
So if you want to hold, just hold that. It doesn't slide in.
Because the wrench is in the way? I can feel the wrench moving.
Okay. Let go. It's like right there. Pull the end of the cable.
Okay.
Does that look good to you, Vic?
Yeah.
It's working.
And it's got enough play in there, too.
Yep. You see it right in there moving.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one's good. Cool. We just got to get a pan gasket and then
So scrape this off.
yeah, we scrape all that shit off and then we'll do that. Okay, just an update where we're at. So we replaced this this kickdown cable right here. We're gonna re-hook it up. Victor's gonna make sure that's hooked up correctly because I screwed it up last time and broke it. So that one's replaced. We have a transmission pan gasket. As you guys saw, we had to drop the transmission pan in order to replace this one right here. It was actually pretty easy, but dropping the pan is the hardest part. Vic is fixing, whoever the tech was that destroyed this pan, he's fixing all the little, so what happened was when you over tighten it, these start to get raised up a little bit, and you don't want that. So Vic is working on fixing that. And then Vic also rewired our O2 sensor, so we're gonna plug that in, and then hopefully that'll make the truck have the correct fuel and air ratio. And then Rob has just been really good moral support.
Beer support.
Actually,
Beer support.
This was Rob's idea. So we give him
Yeah, thanks,
Tips.
Rob.
Tips.
Tips and tricks, baby. So Vic put a layer of gasket, so we put some of this stuff, the ultra black. It's good for transmission pans. And then he put the thing on there, so I'm gonna go throw that in and start to bolt that in, and then go from there.
So maybe like pivot it now.
Yeah, try to see if you could align the two back in there. Just get it past the steering
Go
rack.
right over here, like.
Okay. All right, we got it. So
Okay, now the gasket's all fucked up. But that's okay. You can line up the holes.
transpan is now on. That took a minute, but we went around in circles making sure that it's tightened properly. And then Vic did the throttle cable, and I hooked up the O2 sensor right there. So we're just gonna throw in some tranny fluid, and then we're gonna fire it up, and then do a test drive after that. All right, here's hoping nothing lights on fire.
Look at the engine whisper. You see what it's feeling?
No, I've done this 100 times, so I can tell when it's off a little. And it feels pretty smooth. It's always had the slightest little shake. All right, real quick, we're all wrapped up for today. I had to run in and take a shower because I was covered in transmission fluid and grease and everything like that. So I already took care of that, but Vic and Rob already took off. So where we're standing right now, kickdown cable was replaced, and we did take care of the O2 sensor. We fired the truck up, drove the truck for a little bit. It ran really good. Put it on the highway, it ran at about 70 and it cruised 70 no problem, but I still was having a problem with it not kicking down and shifting that way. So at that point, maybe it wasn't that cable in the first place. The problem with swapping one of these, you know, from a 3.4 into an automatic transmission is that you're going to run into a lot of these problems. So there's some other things that I got to work out. So I'm going to do some research on that and see if I can figure out what's going on. The other thing is, because we replaced the fuel pressure regulator as well as got the O2 sensors, I want to make sure it's having the correct fuel to air ratio. So we're going to do a daily drive test, and I want to make sure that the gas mileage has gone up, because right now our standard is 9 miles per gallon. That's what I got the last time I drove it for like 40 miles on the freeway. I want to see if I can get better than that. So if I can, then I know that those upgrades and those fixes actually worked. So last we left off, we were going to do an MPG test on winchers because we replaced a few things. I was only able to get one MPG test out of the way. So 11.5 miles per gallon. That's what I got. Then since then, there's been some developments, which is why we're going to end this video so we can get started with another video. Now, 11.5 miles per gallon. And with that, the truck has been running way better. It doesn't stink like gasoline anymore. It does blow a little bit of black smoke, but it also doesn't have cats, and it doesn't have the second O2 sensor. So it's running way better than it was before. A lot more power. I can cruise at 70 on the highway with no issues. So pretty comfortable, pretty good to say that those changes made a big upgrade for how the motor's running. Now, let's get into these developments of what happened. I was out doing a little bit of, we'll call it urban rock crawling, and I broke the truck. I ended up snapping the axle on the front. I'll drop the video right here. Oh. Since I went and broke it, what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be getting into the straight axle swap. Finally going to get that done on winchers. So we're going to wrap up the video from here. So I'm going to tell you right now, the fuel pressure regulator O2 sensor, that did so much for how this motor runs. So for you guys that do 3.4 swaps in the future, just keep in mind that first O2 sensor controls fuel and air ratio. So it's super important. And then obviously throttle cables and stuff like that are super important, and fuel pressure, it's a big deal too. So get that stuff replaced. But we're going to wrap up here so we can get started with this stuff. So there's boxes all over the place. You see a straight axle sitting right there. And I'm gonna get started. I gotta go to the store, get some tools. Then I'm gonna get starting with completely gutting this front end and cutting off stuff and doing all that so we can get this thing sassed within the next couple days, because we have some stuff coming up, but we'll talk about that in the next video. Now, if you guys have any questions about the 3.4 swap and all that stuff, check out the videos below. It's kind of been like a mini series that we've been doing on winchers. But if you guys have any questions, check that stuff out, comment below and do all that. But other than that, we are all done here. I want to thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, as well as on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Patreon. You also hit us up for shirts, hats, hoodies, and all those other goodies at dirtnnationnoffroad@gmail.com. I can't wait to get this girl sassed. We're looking forward to it. See you next time.